Hello? Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. Oh, I should definitely talk about that today. Okay. I'll talk to you later. Bye. In this daily drop, I'm going to talk about scraping, data mining, and training Gen AI models. So let's go. All right, here we are, moving right along, and I am starting to go deep into this Gen AI stuff. But I thought in this episode, it would be good to talk about some basic terminology related to how these models get what they get, related to the basis of what they use to generate this stuff. Okay? We call it Gen AI or generative artificial intelligence. I still don't know if that's the right label for this, but we're going with it as a collective. So let's go ahead and do that. But there are some other terms, some other words related to this that I think, well, just in general, if you want to understand the subject, you have to have a basic understanding of what those terms and those words and terminology are. So we hear about things like scraping and data mining and training. And what does that actually mean in its most basic? Well, scraping is data collection, right? So whether it's okay to do it or not okay to do it, it's going out there to the interwebs and scraping information, data, things that are used as the basis for the next step, which is data mining. Mining is then taking not only scrape data, but data that may come from other places and analyzing that, looking for patterns of things that are similar or different, things that can be used as a collective to train generative AI models. Right. So we have companies like Midjourney and Runway and Sora, and they're creating models to do certain things, text to image, image to video. There's lots of different variations of that. And they generate new versions of models that are based on what they've scraped or data mined or both, and then train these models so that we can then input, generally with prompts, sometimes with images and prompts, sometimes with video, all of these different things to generate things that we are imagining, but is based on this stuff that's been scraped and then data mined and then used to train these models. Hopefully that makes sense. It's far more complicated than that, but it is a really important part of the conversation because, for instance, take Midjourney as an example, which has been around for a long time. You could almost put them into GOAT category in terms of generative AI. And as of about a month ago, this past June 2025, both Disney and Universal collectively are suing Midjourney basically because of concerns and the basis of the lawsuit is basically that Midjourney scraped, data mined, trained their AI models based on intellectual property, which would be, in this case, from Disney and Universal. So you take things that are very recognizable to us, and we start inputting things into Midjourney to create new quote-unquote things. Everything's a remix. And it's derivative of intellectual property, which may be owned by, in this case, Universal or Disney, which of course has under it all of those other properties that we know about, like Marvel and Pixar and Disney and all of that stuff. So while this episode isn't necessarily about the ethical or unethical components of generative AI, it's important to understand that in order for things to get created using these different models and these generative AI solutions, that data has to come from somewhere, whether it's ethically sourced and it's coming from one or many places, which is what Adobe was or is trying to do with Firefly, and some other companies are trying to do with their generative AI models and solutions or not, isn't really the whole conversation here, but it is important to understand that there are different ways that these companies, these organizations are getting the basis of what is being used to generate what we then create using Gen AI. I hope that makes sense. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it. Some of this may actually inform your decisions whether or not you're going to go with a particular company solution or not. And there are lots of conversations going on around this, especially for generative AI when it relates to video. And Hollywood being one of, we use that collectively as a term, but these studios and companies are the ones that are most concerned about this overall. In fact, just recently, there's a company, Moon Valley, which has released Mari, which is in theory ethically sourced in terms of the basis of what they're using for generative AI. So lots to talk about here, lots of conversation. We will be diving into looking at specifics having to do with different models and different solutions that are coming from these different companies. But understanding the basic concept of scraping and data mining and training is important in terms of the overall conversation. Again, love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to, wrong direction, but I'm going to go with it. I'm going to make it fit in this space. And I'll see you on the next episode of The Daily Drop.